In 1976, Marshal Zuda joked to his family before his death. "I've never had enough in my life. Mr. Zhu's diet is very restrained, and he saves as much as he can in other aspects of life." As the head of the top 10 founding marshals, he once proposed to the organization that he refused to receive the marshal's salary, and he also offered to cut his salary 3 times, from 659 yuan to 404 yuan per month. Mr. Zhu told his family, "Our country is poor and white, and only by increasing production and saving can we become rich and strong. Just increasing production without saving means that there is no increase in production." He has cultivated a vegetable garden where he lives, and grows vegetables with his wife Kang Keqing after work. In February 1958, the Chinese embassy in Germany suddenly sent a request. "Vice Chairman Zuda has 95,008.3 marks in our embassy, how to deal with this money?" The mark is the name of the German currency. According to the exchange rate at that time, this is definitely a huge sum. How could Boss Zhu have deposits in Germany? How is the money handled? In fact, this deposit was related to a female reporter named Smedley. One, after untold hardships, traveled all over China. In 1892, Smedley was born in a poor working family in the United States. Due to extreme poverty, she did not graduate from elementary school, so she worked as a newspaper boy to make a living. Later, with the help of relatives and friends, I got the opportunity to study in a charity school. Perhaps it was because of the hard life in childhood that affected Smedley in adulthood. She dared to pursue and explore, and especially sympathized with the suffering people. In 1916, at the age of 24, Smedley went to New York, where she met Indian nationalists and began to devote herself to political activities. On the one hand, she wrote articles for the Clarion Weekly magazine and feminist movement publications that promoted socialist ideas, and on the other hand, she supported the Indian exiles' struggle for national independence. In March 1918, she was arrested and imprisoned by the United States for violating the neutrality law, and was imprisoned in the notorious Graveyard Prison in New York. After she was released from prison, she began to live in exile, during which she lived in Denmark, Germany, and other countries. At the end of 1928, Smedley came to China as a special correspondent of the Frankfurt Daily. This was her first visit to China. She witnessed the KMT's White Terror regime, when many communists and progressives were arrested and killed. In order to have a more comprehensive understanding of China, Smedley went to northeast China, Beiping, Tianjin and other places for in-depth observation. The deeper she understands, the more she sympathizes with the tragic situation of the Chinese people being wantonly squeezed by capitalists and foreign powers. She understands the hardships of the people at the bottom and is willing to do her best to contribute. In 1932, she assisted Sun Qingling in founding the China Civil Rights Protection League, a progressive organization with the theme of fighting for civil rights. Smedley, Mao Dun, Lu Xun, and others are like-minded friends. She often reads their works to understand the views and opinions of progressive people on China's current situation. She took the initiative to publish Lu Xun's The Current Situation of Literary and Art Circles in Dark China in American publications to let the world understand the awakened Chinese. It was also during this period that, with the introduction of Sun Qingling and others, she met many progressives with a red background, and she even received our party's secret liaison personnel at home. Smedley wrote articles such as 5 Years of the KMT's Reaction, The Fate of the Chinese, and The Chinese Red Army is Marching to expose the KMT's reactionary rule and China's revolution to the outside world. She writes in the book, "Only when I'm in China, I don't feel like a foreigner. For some reason, I always think of myself as a member of the Chinese people there. I seem to have taken root in that land." The occurrence of the Xi'an incident shocked China and the world, and Smedley stayed in Xi'an as a reporter, always paying attention to changes in the current situation. The Nanjing nationalist government created public pressure by broadcasting the news that Chiang Kai-shek had been shot to the outside world, spreading rumors that after the Red Army arrived in Xi'an, they burned, killed, looted, and committed all kinds of crimes. Smedley was very angry when he learned of this. She couldn't sit back and watch the Kuomintang turn black and white, so she told the real situation of Zhang Suiliang and Yang Huchin's remonstrance to Chiang Kai-shek in English and spread it to the world. She also interviewed military and political circles and Democrats, and let the outside world understand the real situation of the Xi'an incident through their narration. Smedley's instant fame for going against the mainstream media made her situation dangerous. After seeing the relevant reports she released, the Nanjing national government realized that the lies had been exposed, and angrily announced that she would be expelled from China. To get acquainted with Zhu De and understand the Chinese Revolution, Premier Zhou and others learned of what happened to Smedley and offered to help. On January 12, 1937, she was escorted by Red Army soldiers to northern Shaanxi. Here, Smedley met his old Shanghai friend writer Ding Ling, as well as He Long, Peng Dehui, and others. That night, she was received by Chairman Mao and Boss Zhu. When she saw Zhu De, Smedley was very excited. I heard that you are branded with a bounty of 25,000 oceans on your head, and you have been beaten to death many times. In the following conversation, she asked Zhu De about personal issues such as background and schooling experience, hoping that Zhu De could talk about his past in detail. Confused by her curiosity, Zhu De asked why. Smedley replied seriously. Because you were born into a sharecropper family, you are a farmer. As far as she knows, 8 out of 10 people in China are farmers, and the Chinese who have the opportunity to speak to the world are all dignitaries. Smedley believes that in order for the world to understand China, the peasants who make up the majority should also tell the world about their experiences. You told me your life experience, which represents the first time Chinese farmers have spoken to the world. At that time, Boss Zhu only thought about the anti-Japanese war. How could he be able to brag about his experience? He told Smedley that he used to be a farmer and is now a soldier. There are many people like him in China, and suggested that she go around and meet more people. Smedley followed the advice, and together with Chinese translator Wu Lili, she conducted in-depth interviews with Chairman Mao, Premier Zhou, and others in the following days. In March of the same year, Zhu De saw that she was indeed a practical reporter and agreed to her request. The two agreed to spend 2 to 3 nights a week talking about their past experiences and accumulating materials for writing Zhu De's biography in the future. During his stay in Yan'an, Smedley communicated frequently with the leaders of the Communist Party of China and soldiers, and found that they all had lofty ideals. Since the Kuomintang has blocked the news of Yan'an all the year round, and slandered the Red Army as red bandits, robbers, and thugs, the international community's impression of the Red Army is very one-sided. For this reason, Smedley sent invitations to more than a dozen of the most authoritative colleagues in Shanghai. When these foreign journalists came to Yan'an after going through twists and turns, they had a common impression. They are in contact with modern people, people who are as progressive as themselves. When he was in Yan'an, Smedley often wore a military cap with 5 pointed stars and a grey earthen uniform, and he had to go to the front with the troops to fight. Zhu De and Ren Bixi persuaded her to stay in the rear, but she said, "I'm a reporter, so of course I have to go to the front line to get the latest battle situation." For the convenience of news reports during the march, she carried her camera equipment with her, and even her typewriter was tied to her body with a rope. When encountering guerrilla warfare, Smedley put down his job, obey the commander's command, and do some logistical work. Busy with the war, she had no time to eat. Like the soldiers, she ate carrots and vegetables to satisfy her hunger. Smedley went deep into the anti-Japanese frontline positions and was tested by the flames of war. Through her reports, she let the outside world know the real battlefield in China. She also, together with Chairman Mao, Zhu De and others, jointly sent a request to the International Red Cross, hoping to send medical personnel to China to treat the wounded on the anti-Japanese battlefield. Under her call, international friends actively responded to the call, and a group of outstanding doctors including Bethune, Keithua, and Basuhua went to the anti-Japanese base areas led by the Communist Party. Taking advantage of his position, Smedley took the initiative to undertake the propaganda work of the medical aid team to China, and once worked with Bethune on the front line to provide services for the wounded. Later, she wrote this experience into the book China is Fighting Back, telling the world in detail the political and military situation of the North China anti-Japanese war from the Xi'an incident to the early days of the War of Resistance. 3. Overcoming difficulties and completing Zhu De's biography with difficulty. In June 1941, Smedley was forced to leave China due to illness and returned to the United States from Hong Kong for medical treatment. Since entering China for the first time at the end of 1928, she spent 12 years observing and understanding China. She believes that the leaders and members of the Communist Party of China have brand new ideas, noble sentiments, and great ideals. They have brought hope not only to China, but also to oppressed nations in Asia and the world. In order to present the real China she saw to the world, she compiled the newsletters, speeches, and diaries she wrote in the past into the book Battle Hymn of China. This book records how she followed the 8th Route Army and the new 4th Army to the north and south of the river and fought against the Japanese army. It also records what she saw and heard in Yan'an, the holy place of revolution, in a lot of space. Once Battle Hymn of China was published, it was loved by many people in the international community, and the book was also praised as an excellent reportage in the Second World War. Smedley's books were very popular, and her royalties were not low. However, she donated all the manuscript fees to the orphans who suffered from war disasters in China, which made her life very difficult. Her own place of residence was provided free of charge to literary and art workers by the American Consortium. In the United States, on the one hand, she began to write a biography of Zhu De. On the one hand, it invites members of the American Communist Party to promote the Chinese Communist Party in China, mobilizes discussions and donations, and supports the early liberation of the Chinese people. With China's victory in the war of resistance against Japan, she focused her attention on the relationship between the Kuomintang and the U.S. government. She once mentioned in a letter to Zhu De that Chiang Kai-shek and the United States had reached a secret agreement that Qingdao would become the naval base of the U.S. 7th Fleet indefinitely. In July 1946, Smedley received a reply letter from Zhu De, which contained some information about Zhu De's life. From then on, she stopped participating in social activities and concentrated on writing Zhu De's autobiography. But the tree wants to be quiet, but the wind doesn't stop. Because Smedley has been active in the socialist camp all year round and has participated in many major events, he has a high prestige. Her speech often harms the interests of some people, causing the reactionary forces to attack her frantically. When India became independent in 1947, the Nehru government offered to hire her as a government advisor and invited her to India. India, for Smedley, was also a country that was often missed. She was arrested and imprisoned for supporting the Indian independence movement. Nehru once promised her to invite her to India after India became truly independent. In fact, this invitation was very beneficial to Smedley at the time. It can not only solve the difficult situation of life, but also protect her personal safety. However, she finally decided not to go to India in order to write the book The Great Road, The Life and Times of Zhu De. 1949 was an extremely difficult year for Smedley. At the beginning of the year, the U.S. authorities suddenly announced that Smedley was a member of the Soviet espionage organization Ramza Group. Facing unsubstantiated political charges, she fought the U.S. government to the end, and the U.S. Army was forced to drop the false charges against her. However, they deliberately chose to publish the revocation statement at the place where the advertisement was placed, so that for a long time, Smedley was still at the center of the storm of public opinion. One wave of ups and downs and another wave of ups and downs. The anti-communist forces in the United States became stronger and stronger, and eventually developed into McCarthyism. This doctrine maliciously slanders and crazily persecutes members of the Communist Party and progressive Democrats. Because Smedley once spoke for the Communist Party, she was once again pushed into the center of the storm of political and public opinion. Under the influence of the general environment, her original plan to publish The Great was seriously hindered. The publishing house that published the book Battle Hymn of China for her found her again, hoping that she could add some words to discredit the Chinese Communist Party at the end of The Great Road for easy publication. Smedley rejected the publisher's unreasonable request and decided not to publish the book temporarily. Smedley, who had been suppressed in the United States, finally heard an exciting news from the radio in October. Chairman Mao announced to the world on the Tiananmen Gate. The People's Republic of China was established. She wrote a letter to Zhu De, "I already know that the new Chinese government has finally become a reality, and the world will no longer be the same in the future." She also told Zhu De about her various encounters in the United States. The current situation has no room for her. Now that New China has been established, she decided to return to China to have a look. The U.S. authorities knew of Smedley's relationship with New China, which hindered her travel plans. However, Smedley did not give up. She decided to go to Europe first, and then to China. After the itinerary was made, Smedley quietly left the United States with the manuscript of The Great Road. She first arrived in London, England, lived in a friend's house, and began to revise the manuscript. She hoped that the day she arrived in China, she could show the finished work to Zhu De and the others. It is a pity that God's wish did not come true. On May 6, 1950, Smedley, who was only 58 years old, died in Oxford due to the deterioration of his condition after the operation. 6 years after his death, the book The Great Road Zuda's Life and Times had the opportunity to be published. Before her death, Ms. Smedley wrote to a friend, "All income from my writings, wherever they come from, shall go to General Zuda, Commander-in-Chief of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, to be disposed of by him in accordance with his wishes, that is, to build a strong and free China. If the Chinese embassy came, I would be very grateful if I could sing just one song for my body, the national anthem of China, Get Up. As my heart has not found peace anywhere in the world except China, I hope my ashes can be with the dead Chinese revolutionaries." On May 6, 1951, the first anniversary of Smedley's death, her memorial service and funeral were held in Beijing. Her ashes are placed in the Babaoshan Chinese Martyrs Cemetery in Beijing, and the marble tombstone is engraved with an inscription written by Zuda, friend of the People's Tomb of American revolutionary writer, Ms. Smedley. After the publication of The Great Road in 1956, relevant foreign agencies handed over the manuscript fee to the Chinese embassy in East Germany. After the manuscript fee was kept in the embassy for 2 years, the staff of the embassy asked the country for instructions. Vice Chairman Zuda has deposited a manuscript fee of 95,008.3 marks in our library for 2 years. How to deal with this money? Mr. Zhu wrote a reply. Buy new books on natural metallurgy and chemistry and send them back. When these books were shipped back to China, he donated them all to the library and related scientific research units. Looking back on Smedley's life, she has always practiced the spirit of a journalist who dedicated herself to the truth. She cared about the weak more than herself. She is an eternal friend of the Chinese people. The 20th Army, 26th Army, 27th Army, and 42nd Army of the Chinese People's Volunteers who participated in the Battle of Changjin Lake have all fought in Luzhong. A man who dies for his country. Music. Dong Wenhua, symbol of memory. Wait for me, darling. Music. Wang Lida, Wang Chuanliang, selected music from the opera Yimen Mountain. The Battle of Changjin Lake in the Volunteer Army's second battle was both vigorous and heroic. The 20th Army, 26th Army, 27th Army of the Volunteer Army and the 42nd Army that fought in the early stage are all related to Shandong Luzhong. During the War of Resistance against Japan and the War of Liberation, they fought Zibo, Central Shandong. The 4 aces of the Volunteer Army all have a deep imprint of Zibo on their bodies. Once affiliated to the 42nd Army of the 4th Field, many military commanders made great contributions to the Shandong War of Resistance in the central Shandong area during the War of Resistance. Wu Rulin, commander of the 42nd Army, was the head of the 2nd Regiment of the Luzhong military region who moved to the Zai River Basin in 1939. After this heroic unit arrived in the Black Land, it developed into the famous Storm Troop 118th Division of the 40th Army. During the war to resist U.S. aggression and aid Korea, Wu Rulin became the commander of the 42nd Army. He and Sun Dap-yu, the reconnaissance director of the 42nd Army and a native of Zibo, Shandong, were the first senior volunteer generals to enter North Korea to learn about the fighting between the Korean People's Army and the United Nations Army. The 26th Army is an ace army composed of pure Luzhongsa soldiers. This is a strong team with the blood of the Black Iron Mountain anti-Japanese armed uprising force. Starting from Haitian, fight against the Japanese invaders and fight fiercely in Luzhong. Fight Lewu, fight Mengliang, and bathe in blood in southwest Shandong. The 20th Army is an iron-blooded army that came out of Zibo's hail of bullets. This is a new 4th Army unit born in the south of the Yangtze River. After the victory of the anti-Japanese war, it was changed to the 1st Column of the East China Field Army. Under the leadership of General Ye Fei, it moved to Zibo, in the early days of the Liberation War. The 27th Army of the Chinese People's Volunteers, a mighty force that made great achievements in the liberation of Zibo. It was born in Kunyu Mountain on December 28, 1937, all the soldiers from Jiadong. In 1947, it was adapted as the 9th Column of the East China Field Army. In March 1948, under the order of the Central Military Commission, the first battle for the liberation of Shandong was launched, the Battle of Zhangzhou, also known as the Battle of the West section of Jiaoji Road. It took 12 days to liberate the whole territory of Zibo in one fell swoop. The 42nd Army of our volunteer army had rushed to the front line of Huangcaoling before the 9th Corps, and fought bloody battles with the 1st Marine Division of the U.S. Army for several days to prevent the enemy from advancing eastward. After entering the Court, the 9th Corps quickly rushed to Changjin Lake to start combat deployment. The 20th Army took over the 42nd Army, using interspersed and roundabout tactics to divide and block the enemy's aid, and lured the enemy's 1st U.S. Division into Changjin Lake. The 27th Army carried forward the consistent military style of fighting hard and tough battles, and was responsible for attacking cities and villages and fighting bravely. The 26th Army, which is good at defending against fortifications, serves as a battle reserve. In Changjin Lake, they jointly completed the combat mission of dividing and encircling and annihilating the U.S. military. Since then, the Young Chinese People's Volunteers, shouldering the important responsibilities of the party and the country, shouldering the expectations of the people of Zibo, have launched a bloody battle with powerful enemies such as the world's #1 Corps, armed to the teeth, and aggressive enemies such as the 1st Marine Division of the U.S. Army in Changjin Lake. During the Battle of Changjin Lake, Yang Zhensi, commander of the 3rd Company of the 172nd Regiment of the 58th Division of the 20th Army of the Chinese People's Volunteers, was ordered to lead a platoon to cut off the U.S. military's escape route to the south. Under the command of Yang Zhensi, the whole platoon fought tenaciously, ordered the wounded to withdraw from the position with heavy machine guns, calmly picked up the only pack of explosives, ignited the fuse, and threw themselves at the enemy group. Perish together. Peak and smoke billows to sing heroes, and the green hills around you listen. After the war, the Volunteer Army Headquarters awarded Yang Zhensi the honorary title of superhero and named the company Yang Zhensi Company. Introduction to the official account of Lu Zhongfenggu. Born in Shandong, he graduated from the Chinese department of a local university in August 1983, joined the party in July 1984, and graduated from the Jinan Army School in August 1984. In August 1984, he served as the trainee platoon leader of the 1st Army of the Army, participated in the Lishan self-defense counterattack with the 1st Army of the Army, and won the first-class meritorious service in the platoon. In 1985, he served as the deputy company commander of the 3rd Company of the 67th Army of the Army. In August, participated in the Lishan defense operation for the 2nd time with the 67th Army of the Army, and won the first-class meritorious service in the 3rd Company of Great Merit. In 1986, he served as a company instructor. In 1989, he served as the deputy battalion officer of the Jinan military region. In 1993, he served as the major battalion officer of the military division. In August 1995, he was transferred to the propaganda department of the Municipal Party Committee, where he served successively as Deputy Section Chief, Director of the Municipal Cultural Industry Office, Director of the Publicity Office of the Municipal Party Committee, and Director of the Information Office of the Municipal Government, spokesperson of the Municipal Party Committee and Municipal Government. During his service in the Army, he wrote and published a variety of military combat theories and practices and military history articles, and hosted or participated in the creation and writing of large-scale military and local TV documentaries, as well as heroes and models, typical characters such as Su Yanfu, Meng Xiaoman and other major projects excavation, writing, promotion and promotion work. He has written and published more than 10 million words of various works. He has won national, provincial, and municipal external communication awards and engineering awards many times. In 2002, he published a 350,000-word news collection Passionate Echo. In 2006 published a 300,000-word prose collection Blowing the Horn Lianaying, and in 2016 published a 260,000-word collection Scent of Books and Swords. From the perspective of farmers, I rationally analyze the information on agriculture, rural areas, and farmers. Hello everyone, I am Coyote Restaurant. Terrible. The first half of 2023 is about to pass, and we were initially hopeful that everything would return to normal after the epidemic. However, the cruel reality unceremoniously completely destroys our beautiful fantasy. Those retaliatory consumption, retaliatory house purchases and retaliatory births that we look forward to are pure pipe dreams. Instead, we face a series of headaches that make us rot. The employment situation is extremely severe, the housing market continues to slump, and consumer demand has shrunk sharply. These shocking phenomena are mercilessly unfolding before our eyes. First, the pressure to pay pensions is increasing. The economic situation is worrisome, and people in the industry have predicted that if there are no accidents, 6 major changes may occur in society in the next 2 years. First, there will be increasing pressure on pension payments. Although the retired workers ushered in a sliver of good news and their pensions were raised again, the pressure on pension expenditures is getting heavier and heavier. There are 20 million old workers who want to retire every year, and they all need to receive pensions. Compared with them, the number of young people who take part in work every year is relatively small. In the next few years, the domestic pension payment gap will reach 8 to 10 trillion yuan, which is undoubtedly a huge challenge. Second, the number of newborns is decreasing. The number of newborns born continues to decrease. Since the two-child policy was lifted in 2016, the number of births has continued to decline. The number of newborns born in 2017 was 17.65 million, and by 2022, this number will drop to only 9.56 million. According to the latest news, this year's maternity filing work has been basically completed, and it is estimated that the number of births in 2023 will be less than 8 million. Young people's willingness to marry and have children is getting lower and lower, and the continuous decline in the number of newborns is inevitable. Third, the employment situation is becoming increasingly severe. Third, the employment situation is getting more and more severe. The employment situation this year is worrisome. After the lockdown is lifted, a large number of social workers have poured into the job market. In 2023, there will still be 11.58 million recent college graduates who need to find jobs. However, after experiencing the impact of the epidemic for as long as 3 years, all walks of life have fallen into a downturn, many companies have declined in profitability, and their recruitment needs have shrunk sharply. Some companies only recruit more than 20 positions, but there are 200 to 300 people competing. This kind of fierce employment competition situation is not optimistic. In order to encourage flexible employment, the state has even relaxed the restrictions on street stalls. However, many young people can only turn to civil service examinations or postgraduate entrance examinations because they cannot find suitable jobs. Fourth, the real estate market is becoming increasingly sluggish. The real estate market is also in a downturn. Not only the transaction volume and transaction area of new houses have shrunk sharply, but the transaction volume of second-hand houses has also declined sharply. The transaction volume of second-hand housing in Beijing, Shanghai, Nanjing, Hangzhou and other places is declining, and the decline is alarming. This is mainly because after the epidemic, the income of ordinary people has decreased, and the demand for buying houses has become more rational. At the same time, housing prices in many places have begun to fall, and the implementation of property tax is approaching.